Robo Hobo.
So I started playing Half-Life 2 again, and it's such a cool game. And I think even though it's 18 years old now, there's something about it that's just so well crafted. It's such a work of art. And I've been playing around with Unity and making games a bit myself for a while now. And I thought it'd be really fun to remake something from Half-Life. And I stumbled across some archives of original concept art and original ideas that they had when they were developing Half-Life 2. And I came across the book Half-Life 2 Raising the Bar. And in that book, some of the original concepts for Half-Life 2 are so interesting. They're so dark, and the rendition of this dystopian world is so gritty. And I really like that about the seed or the spark of their kind of original ideas. I like that they were trying to do something that was really different. It's this gloomy kind of world, this very dark world that you kind of get glimpses of in places like Ravenholm. And I think Ravenholm is a really good example of sort of the dying planet that they were trying to describe. And then the rest of it feels sort of sunlit and only gently hinting at how dire the situation is. So my idea was to take basically one of my favorite maps of Half-Life 2. It's probably not the most enjoyable map, if I were to choose one, but I just distinctly remember having such excitement when I first came across the vehicle, the little dune buggy. I couldn't believe that after everything that we'd been through in the game already, that they were now opening up the maps to drive in. It just blew me away. And for a game that was made in 2004, I think it was pretty wild what they actually accomplished. The physics for the car are so crisp and so responsive. I mean, they aren't as good as what we kind of have today in vehicle physics and just realism, but it has the right feeling and it has the right notes for this gritty kind of oil leaking V8 engine that you can almost smell as you're driving it. I also love the way that they are indicating even further the desperation of humanity through the state of the car. I mean, it was kind of annoying to me that I didn't really know where the engine was in this thing when I first got into it. But the way that it's constructed and the way that it's made out of this rusting metal, I think is just so interesting. And I just had a lot of fun with it. So I'm going to remake that, or a portion of that map, in Unity using the high definition render pipeline. I think we have to use the high definition pipeline because Half-Life is a realistic game, and the HDRP is going to give us that realism that the other rendering pipelines aren't. So that means that we can do much more detailed texturing and lighting, and that should make things look really crisp and clean. And there's no point in making a Half-Life remake if it's not going to look better than a game made 18 years ago. So the other thing that I really want to get out of this project, other than the joy of recreating something so spectacular, is exploring the Half-Life development. I mentioned the book Half-Life 2 Raising the Bar, and I really enjoyed reading through that. There's so much in there about the challenges and the technologies that they had to develop just to get the game out the door. If you haven't read that and you're a Half-Life fan, I highly recommend checking that out. There's also a couple of like modding communities out there that are trying to recreate some of these older concepts, bring the Half-Life beta to life. One of the mods is called Half-Life Dark Interval, and I think that looks pretty cool. They have a couple of screenshots showing the coastal area, describing it in a much more dried out, dead kind of way, and I really like that. So I think I'll draw a little bit of inspiration from that as well, but trying to stay more faithful to the original concepts and the finished maps. I think having a combination between the two is more interesting than going one way or the other. So alongside making the game, making a functional vehicle and a map and some enemies, ant lions and a couple of combine soldiers, I think I really want to just use it as an opportunity to explore the origins of Half-Life, really dig down into what they went through to produce the game. I think I really want to understand as well what their inspiration was right from the very start. I know that Half-Life 2 was built predominantly off of Half-Life 1, the original old school game, which is pretty goofy and pretty awkward in a lot of ways, and some of the concept art for that is hilarious. I think it's just cool to go back and try to figure out some of the reasons and means that they had to come to the design conclusions that they did. I think it's also interesting that it's captured this moment in gaming development history that will probably never happen again. This capacity for these small to mid-sized teams to produce stuff that is so great, and the vision for it is so strong, and they pushed in such a different direction compared to a lot of the competition that was around at that time. They were trying to get away from what was mainstream kind of shotgun pumping heroes and
Go to my little friend. Let's rock.
They're heading for the roof!
Don't get your panties all in a bunch.
try to do something a little more, well, hipster, I guess. It worked. It worked really well. The other thing that I found really interesting as I started digging deeper into the development of Half-Life 2 was this art director that they had called Victor Antonov. I don't know at which stage he came on. Some of the original footage of the early stages of Half-Life development look pretty awkward, and there's this definite American influence in the architecture and the landscape, which got scrapped completely and was replaced with something very Eastern European. And I think that made the game much more interesting. I'm so glad that they made that decision, and I'm so glad that they brought on Victor Antonov. His artwork is amazing. For the time that he was working, 2002, these concepts are mind-blowing. I mean, it's quite clear that he's painting over some 3D models. I don't know if he developed them or if a 3D modeler was making them at the time. I know that the tools for that sort of craft were much more primitive than they are now, so probably was quite difficult. So he's kind of an interesting character and an interesting stage of development when he came on. So I might do a little bit of investigating into his history and where he came from, and see if I can dig out a bit more about some of the origins for Half-Life designs and concept art. What I'd like to do as I develop this short little map is do some concept art as well, kind of replicating that Victor Antonov style and look. I think that would be quite fun and quite challenging to do. So here's what I've got so far. This is using the built-in kit that comes with Unity, the first-person shooter starter pack. I just got that running in Unity, and it was super simple to set up. It was obviously built for the universal render pipeline, so I've had to convert a lot of materials over to HDRP. That's why there's some pink stuff there. Don't worry about that. I'm going to get rid of it. But I've got the car working, and I've reused some code from previous projects to get that up and running pretty quick. There are proper physics for the wheels, which is just using Unity's wheel colliders, and the friction is tuned for the weight of the car, and the slipperiness of sort of a partly wet sand. The other thing that I really love doing is imitating mechanical things in a video game. I find it so satisfying to engineer something with scripting and physics in Unity. It's just the imitation of man-made objects seems to be so satisfying to me. Ignore the state of the textures on this buggy. This is something I downloaded, and for some reason the UV maps have all got screwed up. I'll be fixing that. I think I'm going to redo the buggy anyway and put in the Half-Life 2 Episode 2 buggy, which is, I think, much cooler. And I like the fact that the engine is in the front as well. I really want to have that kind of V8 engine vibrating and maybe hissing out steam and oil and things like that. But now that I've got a few things working, and it seems quite straightforward and viable to produce this section of the coast from Half-Life, I want to kind of pull back a bit and do a couple of concepts, figure out a plan and some enemies and a few little gameplay aspects that could be quite fun. I want to go and really kind of establish that mood and atmosphere that was present in some of the original concepts, and see if I can pull that into something in Unity and make it really fun and really gloomy and dark, and kind of make the player feel like the planet is really dying and suffocating under the rule of the Combine. So that's it for now. If you're liking what you see and you're kind of interested in the progress of this project, follow along. I'll try to produce some videos fairly regularly for people and keep up to date on what I'm doing. I'm really looking forward to this project for so many reasons, art-wise and game development-wise, and I really like that it's an opportunity for me to understand the development of Half-Life 2 a bit more as well. It's a bit of a mysterious game for me in some ways, and it's hard for me to connect the dots between an American developer and what the final product was, so I would love to fill in some of the blanks on that, and I'm wondering if other people feel the same way too. Anyway, that's all now. Bye.